Welcome back. This is episode 10 of the Sniff session. Thank you for being here and for staying tuned in. 10 episodes is quite monumental because I didn't think I was going to stick with this, but I think I found a format/modality that works for me at this current stage in life. And we've also reached over 100 Spotify listeners, and we've got almost 200 YouTube subscribers. So that's quite, monumental. So I want to thank everybody for helping us reach these milestones. So I thought I could reflect with you about 10 things I've learned since starting this podcast. Okay, the first one, which was kind of something I knew, but I wanted to reiterate, is that done is better than perfect. There are always ways to improve things, and there are always ways to make things highly qualitative or really eye-catching. I could spend time working on cover pages so I could attract more listeners, but what I wanted to do was not create the biggest, greatest, brightest fragrance podcast. I just wanted a platform on which I could do more long-form content, chatting about scents, and also going through the many discovery sets I have, or the many samples I have based on a theme. And it's felt really good to just go with the flow of how I'm feeling, as opposed to try and create a formula that's going to be successful, because at the end of the day, the success is in the execution. Okay, then scandal and drama cells. I think in the first 2 episodes, I had more scandalous things to talk about. And in my little promo clips that I would post to other platforms, that drew in more listeners, and those tended to be my more successful episodes in terms of viewership or people tuning in. And, well, that's nice to know. I'm not necessarily going to tap into that all the time because sometimes it's very boring. For instance, if anybody's on TikTok, a movie has just been released starring Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, I believe. And apparently there's been some cast drama there. I have no idea what the actual drama is. All I know is that every single video I've seen on TikTok speaking about it has a lot of engagement, but the drama itself is so boring. People just like being in the know about something, and yeah, drama is not always exciting. Sometimes it can be, though, if it's juicy enough, and I just think that maybe my standards for drama are a little bit higher than the current It Ends With Us drama. So I think that might actually facilitate me doing a social media break. Actually, in the first week of September, I will sort of be doing that because I'll be away for a lab retreat. But that is something that I noticed. So I think if it fits and I think it's interesting, it would be included if it's on my mind. But other than that, I think I'll just stick to going with the flow. Next thing was that being aware of algorithms ruins the creative process. And I think this ties into the first thing, done being better than perfect. The YouTube formula is kind of straightforward. You need to have bright lighting, flashy titles, maybe a shocked look on your face or a sexy demure look if you're on perfume, and telling people that these are the 10 fragrances that are going to change your life forever. And you can trust me, I've smelled thousands of fragrances. There are no fragrances like these ones. And most of the time, I wouldn't say that those are life-changing fragrances. I think there are very few fragrances that would be able to change your life. And so I think that if I were to try and box myself into that modality, this is why I chose a more podcast format instead of trying to do conventional YouTube videos. I think that would very quickly make me bored and drain me. And I realize also doing this podcast is far more fun for me these days than making TikToks. just because I think that on YouTube, depending on who you follow, because I don't find that there's necessarily a sense of community of frag calm creators on YouTube. There's definitely recognizability, but I wouldn't say that these people are going to come together and have lunch. So I feel like because you kind of have this isolation, and even more so on Spotify, you have a level of isolation that really allows you to cultivate your own rhythm, your own flow, and then your own content style, essentially. And I think that's really fun. It's been making this much easier to do. And part of that ease is the fact that you and I are discoursing over QuickTime Player on my 2021 14-inch MacBook Pro, because there's a decent webcam. And that was quite surprising because I've never had a laptop with a decent webcam for most of my life. And I didn't even get this laptop for the webcam. It was for the specs because my old Mac died and I needed something that happened to be equivalently cheap to get. And it was actually brand new in the box, but from a secondhand retailer. So it was like, thank you, universe. I needed that win. And that leads into that you don't need fancy equipment to create. And I think that it's true for this podcast. I mean, I have my little $30 mic on my favorite pen and my 1080p webcam on my laptop. And here we are talking about beautiful fragrances together on a semi-weekly basis. And it works. People keep coming back. And that's very exciting. And of course, things will improve in the future as I get access to more resources, that I can upgrade equipment. If I have a better space, I can create a proper scene. Like, everything is as needed. Like, we have a minimum viable product, and that's really exciting to see, because people always say that. They always say, oh, you don't need a fancy equipment, you can just do it. And you never really believe them. But I'm here to tell you it is true. And one day we'll all look back on these days and be like, wow, look at where the Sniff session started and look where it is now. Where that will be, we don't know, but we're having fun along the way. Which also leads into another point, which kind of coincides with the fact that scandal and drama sells, which is that leading with authenticity makes creation easier. I always remark on how I don't understand how so many people have so much energy, because, like I always say, so if you go into an average creator, especially like the men, you guys have time to do all of these random zoom ins on the content. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to talk to you about the ultimate beast mode fragrance that you need to have in your collection. It is from XYZ. And that takes a lot of energy to embody this character that's almost in a salesman, authority figure mode. And I wish I had that energy, but I don't. So I had to just lean into who I am. And sometimes I am excitable and I'm goofy and I'm silly, and I will be that when I am that, but when I'm not, I can't. And so I'm very happy that I never ever started off any kind of platform trying to be more enthusiastic, or not enthusiastic. I'm very enthused, but I'm not always I don't know, charismatic in that way, I guess. And so it makes it much easier to create if you just lean into who you are, and also your opinions. And while I don't necessarily make negative reviews, I think I'm always fair. I won't ever say that a fragrance is something I'm obsessed with if I'm not. And I think you'll know the fragrances I'm obsessed with because I'll keep bringing them up. When I show you the bottle, you'll see the juice going lower and lower. And I just realized how I think I might have messed up in that regard, because sometimes when you have no energy to create, especially on short form platforms, it's so nice to just pull out a bottle and just say this bottle and this bottle with your hands. But alas, all of mine are dented and a little bit smushed with my finger oils and used, because I'm using these things because they're part of my life. I definitely think, as much as I love nice things and sometimes expensive things, I'm definitely the kind of luxury consumer that is like an Olsen twin rather than somebody who keeps the dust bags for their Birkins. Like, mine's going to be decorated and beat up, and that's just that. Not that I will ever buy a Birkin, but you know the sentiment. Then, oh yes, which leans into the fact that many people don't care about the consequences of their consumption. I really liked having a space where I could talk about things that kind of disappoint me in the industry and horrify me. And it's often difficult to then go back to other platforms and you can see how other people really don't care at all. And this is talking about, I don't know, like that, like the founders who are openly promoting violence against people, or these big conglomerates that dilute the beauty and creativity of what were once amazing niche artisanal brands, or the fact that they just cut corners in probably sub-ethical ways, or the fact that they test on animals, or just so many things where it's like, okay, yes, the scent is beautiful, but could we perhaps not buy it from the retailer? Maybe let's get it secondhand, or maybe let's find an alternative from an indie or artisanal brand, which is the topic of the day. And this is not something I learned necessarily from doing this podcast. I think I've just become more aware because I have been discussing this, and then I'll consistently see online even people who I think have the most eclectic taste, and then they'll be talking about a certain subject and then suddenly, oh, there's a BDK perfume, and it's like, oh, okay, you don't care. Or, oh, look, here's a link to my Skylar affiliate code. Oh, okay, cool. And it's okay. I don't think people have to have the same morality, but it's just interesting to see. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to expand more on that because it's not personal, but I always think about how these same people would engage in a situation wherein I may be placed in the position of victimhood. I always just wonder. But that also leans into the fact that despite not everything being everybody's cup of tea or everybody having the same agreements, there's always an audience. So I think that if anybody out there is considering creating content or making videos or doing something or embarking on a project that ultimately is meant to be for the eyes of many, not just the self, there is always an audience. So you might as well just try it out and see what happens. You never know what the benefits of that might be. And that also leans into the fact that not everybody is for every medium. And I think I've known this. I think sometimes it's hard to convert your audience from one platform to another. And that's fair. And also I'm still very fascinated by how much different platforms are weighted. So you could definitely have like 2,000 followers on YouTube and you will have every brand under the sun happy and interested in following and working with you. And you can have, I think, about above 5,000 followers on Instagram, and then same thing, amazing. On TikTok, you definitely need to be in the hundreds of thousands to have, I think, the same level of interest from brands. I'm not saying you don't have any interest, and in fact, depending on how you create your platform, you might have a better experience with brands, just because I think people always vibe with how you speak about fragrance or how you engage with the love or the art of it, and so that also plays into things. So I think I'm definitely far away from 100,000 followers, and I'm only like close to 20k very slowly on TikTok, but I've also had the most amazing engagements with brands that I would never have expected, and I always love that for me. Like, I think I have the best PR. The very few times have I received something and I thought, I don't know why this is being sent to me. So I'm always happy about that. And also, I think it also allows more space to just talk about different scents. It's not every day the same brands, the same perfume. And I think it's only with Kayali stuff that I'm talking about the same fragrances as everybody else. But other than that, I think that I get to play in the outskirts, and I still can engage with the discovery sets that I got by myself, or new finds that I've loved, and curate things. And I'm still exploring and creating as I go along. But whatever you create on whatever platform is going to be a different kind of person. So not everybody that follows you on TikTok cares about your pictures on Instagram or cares about your long form content on other platforms, and that's okay. And I knew that, but I wanted to reiterate that. So don't feel bad, don't feel sad. Sometimes you really just have to start from square one and build it up brick by brick, which in itself is really exciting, because it's like a whole new playing field, a whole new learning curve, and that's very exciting. And it's also easier when you don't see your peers. And I think this is definitely based on my experience on TikTok, because there we do have community, but because you follow your friends and you see the trends and you wonder, should I participate, should I not, and do I want to? And then sometimes you do find yourself becoming a voice in the crowd, just a part of the noise, instead of doing your own authentic thing, because it's hard to not be influenced by a bunch of influencers. So those are the 10 things that I've learned since starting the podcast that I thought were remarkable enough to share. And there was also my epiphany that I had this morning. So you're having a very rare glimpse into my personal journal. I don't journal daily, but I journal when I feel the need. And it was about the interaction between artists and the audience and the art itself, which by no means is to say that I believe myself to be an artist, but I think it's the entire interaction between the creation of a body of work and the intent that goes into that, and then how that is transmitted from the creator to the audience and how they will perceive that. Even when it comes to speaking words, everybody has their own. Actually, I have a little paragraph that I'll read to you, and I don't know if it makes sense because I literally wrote this almost like automatic writing when I woke up this morning. So I said, while the artist can portray a scene or convey a message with intention, there is no control over how the art is consumed or interpreted. They can only control the art, but the audience is inaccessible. Sure, one can mold influences and tastemakers to perpetuate the intention, but they're not interested in the work. So at the end, art is a black box exchange between the artist and the beholder. At best, one can attach a heartstring to engage with it, but we're all wired differently. So what resonates won't always harmonize with the starting intent. So that's already saying what I'm transmitting is not necessarily what you're going to receive, in a nutshell. And I was thinking about art in general in the week, but I was specifically thinking about this phenomenon I've noticed on social media with a couple of brands now, wherein the brand founder, or maybe a CEO or a lead person who invested in the brand, is now becoming the face of the social media. Now, I don't necessarily think this is a good or a bad thing. I think that people in marketing might have different ideas about this, but I found it interesting because, to me, if we go back to this morning ramble, it feels as though more brand creators or founders or CEOs are trying to make sure that they're tuning your radio correctly by coming in, showing their face. And while I definitely believe in controlling one's own narrative, I also can see that sometimes they are trying to use the devices of the platform to try and appeal to you, to try to appeal to audience. So, and sometimes it doesn't come across. Sometimes I don't think it translates well. Sometimes they seem a little alien. Sometimes they seem a little, I don't know. It's just like, why are you here? What? And this is not to say it's everybody, because there are certain brand founders that do it, in my opinion, really well, and you can't wait to hear more from these people. And I think sometimes it's so integral to the ethos of the brand that it's very necessary that we see the face of the person behind it. And then sometimes I think that you have enough funding to just let the marketing people do their thing, and you should do your thing. Go be the CEO, go do whatever you were doing before you came onto the internet. And I think I've got 3 good examples of where it's well executed in the concept. So, and they're all 3 white men from in different parts of the world. But I think that these are and I think the way that the brands are, the way that they show up on the internet makes sense. So, one, Maison Crivelli, right? Thibaut Crivelli is the founder and creative director of Maison Crivelli. But Maison Crivelli has quite I would say professional hold in the market. They are in many stores all around the world. I think they have some good financial backing. So there is kind of a corporate identity that has creativity attached to it. They often do collaborations with artists, but these artists themselves are also professionals, and you get professional photography, and you have very defined copy about what each scent is and what the movement is. But the notion of creativity and art is imbued in all of the marketing. I mean, Maison Crivelli was one of the first to do these transforming scent blotters where an image appears upon spray. And each scent itself is inspired by one of the life experiences of the founder. And he is a traveler, polyglot, very interesting man, very nice man as well. I met him in 2022. And so he goes to perfumers with his specific brief, and then they will co-create a scent that, of course, includes the elements of the lived experience, and that goes into the storytelling, but is also generally likable. And so Thibaut Crivelli has a here and now kind of presence on TikTok and Instagram, where he will come on and say, hello explorers, I'm Thibaut Crivelli, founder of Maison Crivelli, and then he will say whatever his message is and then bounce. He's there to be more of a point of interaction, to learn more about the brand or maybe the sense, or to just engage with the community, but not so much as to market himself and his stuff. And I think that works well. And in fact, that's the theme across these 3 examples that I think do it really well. And then you've got James of Filigree and Shadow. And I found out what filigree is, and I was like, interesting. And he is very much a community builder. He's an indie perfumer out of Seattle in the US, and he's online. He talks about a lot of indie perfumers. He talks about justice in perfumery. He talks about social justice, and his work kind of services his community work as well. So that is who he is as a person. That's the ethos of his brand, and he's created perfume community in Seattle as well, bringing people together and making people aware that these issues exist, and that they are also creative people who care about these issues. And so he's kind of a nexus point for all of these different interactions, and I think it really works well because you know who he is about front and center, and you can know you're making a feel-good purchase. And he also cares about connecting artisanal perfumers from around the world so that he can have a resource for people to go to. So if you want to go to Indonesia, this is where you can go. Do they have a discovery set? This and that. He's also kind of helping create a standard within the industry, not only in the indie space, but I think in niche in general. I think if you're creating a brand in 2024 and you don't have a discovery set, I don't think you care about being accessible. And I don't think in the long run you will be that great unless you already have a name for yourself. I'd be very interested to see how well the new Valentino fragrances do, for instance. They don't have a discovery set, but somehow the team at Valentino thinks that they'll still be able to reach enough clientele with their $300 plus markup or price point. So that would be interesting to see. So James was also a really good example of that. And then we've got Josh Smith of Libertine, who is a Canadian indie perfumer, and he is a person that's very much connected to his natural environment in Canada, and his scents very much reflect that. And he's also just a fun person, and his videos reflect that as well. He talks about his business. He talks about perfumery and the art of creation, and gives you a dance every now and then. And he also creates really beautiful videos. Like, it'll be 30 seconds and it'll be so well produced. It puts every perfume content creator to shame, if I'm honest. But so his work creates a mood around the brand. And once again, he doesn't market his products to you. You very much know that the page is a perfume brand, but I think that the way he inserts imagery and mood around what the brand is about is what would draw a person into discovering more. And he has a discovery set and incense, and he brings you into his studio and into his creative process to see like how everything comes together. So I think that those are, I don't know if these were strategy or if these were planned out and thought about, but these were 3 examples of founders, CEOs, brand owners being on social media in a way that I think is productive, palatable, engaging, interesting, and fun. And then the others which I think are less successful, which I don't think is necessary to go into, but yeah, that's what that is. So normally we do a what I've been wearing lately. And if I really think about it, I don't think I've been wearing anything different. I think I've been wearing the same fragrances. I've been wearing Born Dreamer a lot, that Pear and Broxton scent by Charli D'Amelio, which is really, really interesting. One thing that I have been wearing of late, which is something that I bought after last session, is Summer 1928 by Kamila Aubre. This is a little cute flacon, this little 15 ml, and it's just kind of a dabbing situation, just like a woman would do in earlier years. So you have kind of a little glass dabber, and you just dab onto your skin, and the scent itself is stunning. So she was inspired by Ray Bradbury's writing, and specifically Dandelion Wine, when creating this fragrance, and she wanted to create a scent that evoked the feeling of dandelion wine. I'm not really sure what that is, but it has citruses and ginger that seem to be steeped and aged, in my opinion. And then you have a nutty, woody facet. It feels quite resinous, and there's something that feels a little bit boozy, like an oak barrel that would have stored some kind of liquor. And it's really beautiful. I think that I've really been enjoying it in summer nights, but when fall hits, this is going to be my jam. And this is my second botanical fragrance And I'm very excited to have this and wear it. And I think she's getting rid of this flacon format, but I really wanted something like this in my collection. I think it's so dreamy and beautiful, and I just like when perfume feels ritualistic, and something like just a dabber format feels so ritualistic to me as well. And so that's super stunning. I've already been yapping for half an hour, so I don't need to go any more into what else I've been wearing, but I wanted to explore some more independent perfumers this week, because I mentioned last week about how they're so inspiring because they're just bravely creating. And I thought we could go through different examples about how one could be an indie perfumer or engage in perfumery in an independent capacity. So I'm sure most of you know by now that most perfumers work for fragrance houses. And these fragrance houses are the people that source different raw materials and also train perfumers after they've had their basic instruction in perfumery. So these would be houses like Givaudan, Firmenich, Robertet, and others. But there are also people who train in perfumery and then they don't go work for these big houses, and then they work independently and set up their own consultancy or their own company, like Cécile Zarokian, for instance, after having worked probably for one of the bigger houses. And then there are also people who learn how to create fragrances and then they take it from there. And there are many of them around the world. And most of the time, I think in the US there's a lot of indie perfumers, and they create, it's a kind of a class of fragrance which is not the same in Europe, in my opinion. So like I think of Alchemia, Poesy. I don't think we've got brands like that in Europe, but there are different ways people are independent perfumers. So you can be an independent perfumer and have your own brand and sell that. And I have two examples of that today here. One being Linen Tutu, which is a newer brand that launched. It's based out of Hudson Valley in the US, and I've got two references from them. I have Lately at 5 and one you've heard before. Let's say it all together now. Hearsay at 3. It's been a very refreshing summer musk. And Daniela creates plant-based fragrances, which I think is a very careful way of saying that these are mostly natural. But what I love is that Daniela is working with these materials in a form of kind of a certain type of artistry, but at the same time also using some aromatherapeutic referencing in the work itself. And I like that we're not getting yet another green, clean fragrance brand where they're trying to tell you that they're going to save you from cancer because you're using this perfume instead of other perfume. No, these are very beautiful, evocative fragrances. There's a discovery set you can get. And what I really appreciate about them is that they really capture the essence of a moment or a mise en scène or a scenery. Like you get transported somewhere. Hearsay at 3 for me each of them have their own associated copy, but Hearsay has just been so fresh and transportive. To me, it just feels like the lightness of summer. And whereas Lately, which is this jasmine fragrance with a bit of a hinoki there, it feels like golden hour at sunset. It is sun-dried jasmine. It is luscious, romantic. It feels like in the pandemic, in the late afternoons when I was living in Paris, there was a man that would go through the neighborhood in the Marais, and he had one of those loudspeakers and he would be blasting, I think it's just like a saxophone version of La Vie en Rose. And so it feels like a hot summer afternoon, a slight breeze coming in through the windows, the sun rays are coming through onto your room. I had a little like poofy couch pillow on the floor on a mat. That would be my lounge area in my little tiny studio. And then I would hear La Vie en Rose in the sunshine. I'd maybe be reading a book. And that's what lately captures for me. Just a romanticism, the golden of sunshine, the beauty of that floral jasmine, and the slight woodiness to bring it through together. All of the fragrances are really delicate. Oh, there's one that even smells like oil painting at a riverside. You have to smell them for yourself to understand what I mean. But this is a beautiful example of a self-created style of perfume with a beautiful aesthetic, and it's a really put together collection. And so Linen Tutu is really brilliant. And I mean, I really just spoke about Josh, but Josh is another example, and he's based out of Canada. I couldn't tell you where. I really only know like 3 names that exist on in the country, despite how big it is. But this is another brand. His perfume brand was formerly named Libertine Fragrance, but it will be transitioning to Paraphrase. Now, as I said before, Josh's scents really evoke the essence of somebody that is in touch with nature in my eyes. And not to say that they all smell like being outside, but I think that there's a deep connection to the natural world in these. And I've just highlighted 4 of my favorites today, which I've loved the entire time. When I get to the US, I will be like putting in some orders. So I'm really stacking my coins. So one of my favorites, which is such a special fragrance, which this should be featured in magazines really, and it's Smoked Bloom. This is such a gorgeous smoked osmanthus, rich. It feels chypre-like, but because of course osmanthus is not a typical chypre flower, it has the elegance of a chypre, I should say. So it feels like something I would recommend to an elegant lady. But it also has this bitter greenness to it, that it feels witchy. This is a perfect autumn floral. And I hardly ever think florals have a necessary seasonality, except neroli, but the way this has come together, it's so special and could never be replicated, honestly. This is so genius. I really, really love that. And then we have Soft Woods. Now, this is one of my favorites. Like, I very sparingly bring this out because I'm trying to preserve my juice. But yeah, to me here the woods feel alive. Like you can feel new bark, and then a creaminess takes over. And there's an ever slight rosy haze to it. It just feels delicate. It feels like a soft creature. It feels like that line in the Mary Oliver poem. It feels like letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves. And I felt that so deeply when I first smelled it, and it's absolutely stunning. It's again another autumn fragrance. These past few days I've realized I might be an autumn person, because I don't mind a grey day every now and again. I do need intermittent sunlight because I'm partially a plant, but I like the need for coziness and richness, and sometimes in high heat the delicacy of fragrances like these gets lost. But Softwoods is really incredible. In fact, the entire Discovery set is excellent. I love his direction. It feels varied enough to have something for everybody. But I really like his more warm, rich fragrances. And one of the warmest and richest is Gilded. This is brown sugar, cardamom, but it's not sickly sweet like you'd expect, which I think commercial brands might be more leaning into. This one also has a rich woodiness to it, but that sharp cardamom really brightens it. This is amazing. This feels like the spicy woody accord that a lot of spicy vanillas have, but without the vanilla being the main star. But mind you, you give me anything with cardamom in it and I'm highly likely to like it, so maybe don't take my word as authority. And then, Eros fig. Now I have to confess, fig, not necessarily something I always want. It's not something I always need. I don't necessarily desire a fig, but Eros fig, stunning. So you get, of course, the green aspects of the fig and then the creamy coconutty parts. And then there's something, again, quite carnal in here. I say again because I've said this before, but maybe 2 years ago. I'm sorry, I always assume like you've seen everything I've ever created, which is probably not the truth. But this is beautiful because a lot of modern figs are quite powdery. And while there is an element of powderiness here, it's not the main effect. This one does have a bit more of a juiciness to it. And I love it. It's one of my favorite figs, honestly. Eros fig, Il Pourpre by Liquide Imaginaire. I like the way the fig is worked in Ground by Gabar, and I love it in Swim by Gabar. I didn't love Cèdre Figalia by Atelier Maturi, as in it's not a bad fig fragrance, it's just not for me. So these are examples of perfumers with their own brands, beautiful line. And then you can be an overachiever like Anaïs Begin, who is the founder of the Maison Jardin D'Ecrivains, which carries a host of lines, including Chapel Factory, Les Cocos de Paris, Jardin D'Ecrivains, and she has a candle brand as well, which has a name that escapes me right now. And I say, once again, if you're ever in the Marais in Paris, go to the flagship store. It's a wonderful little maximalist haven. It looks incredibly chic, but it also looks like you could possibly buy a spell from the keeper. And I've been obsessed and in love with Chapel Factory's Holy Stick for years now. I always still question why I have not purchased this yet. This is a cardamom, elemi, palo santo. So you really, but it also has I think it's a bergamot. There's a very bitter greenness in the opening, and then quite a saccharine sweetness and a tanginess. And then you have woods just rounding it out. It is so cozy, comforting, and I'm pretty sure it brings me good luck. But we'll not talk about that right now. It's not time for being esoteric. And I recently did an order, and I have discovered one of the newer lines in the Chapel Factory range called L'eau d'épine, which is supposed to be thorny water. And boy, oh boy, is it. This is a rose that's prickly, a little bit watery, spiced, as you could imagine. This feels like something the Love Witch would wear. This feels like something a beautiful but sinister woman would don, and I think it's beautiful. Also, I love the Chapel Factory bottles. But out of the Jardin D'Ecrivains line, she released Morris not too long ago, and this is a stunning citrus musk. Oh, Valerie? What, liking a citrus musk? Groundbreaking. No, but what I really like about this musk is that it's not a clean white musk. It's a little skanky, it's a little musky, but then it also has two different kinds of, I think it's bergamot and lemon and ginger. The ginger really pulls it through. It adds a little sparkle, and I've really been enjoying the heck out of this. I also enjoy how she has different materials. I forgot the brand Gris Gris she also has, which is inspired by different tattoo rituals and traditions in different cultures around the world. Very interesting stuff. I think you just have to try her stuff and then you'll understand. I already have a full bottle from the Jardin D'Ecrivains line, which is Howl, inspired by the Allen Ginsberg poem. And that is such a beautiful amber, which is almost an amber fougere. It has aromatics like lavender that really give it that almost barbershop appeal, but it just feels like a beautiful, dark, academic amber, perfect for the winter time, quite cozy, very interesting. And I almost want to say I've spoken for too long, but I want to continue because you can also have all of these brands, I would say, between Libertine, Linen Tutu, and Chapel Factory and Jardin D'Ecrivains are at a decent price point. I think you could choose between one of these or a designer fragrance on the market. It's not everything high price. And then you also have the indie perfumers that are more, I would say, niche, in terms of you would call it a niche brand instead of an indie brand. And I don't see how people classify the distinctions in their brains, but people do. And I'm sure that there are justifiable reasons for these different categories. But in the same vein, this is also an indie perfumer, but she has a luxury niche fragrance brand, and that is Pisara Umavjani and her brand Dusita. I recently got Isara from the brand, and it's such a beautiful grassy tonka Clara Sage, so cozy. I've loved it. I craved it for years. But she also included some samples of her newer scents because I had bought the Discovery set a few years back. First of all, I would like to apologize to Anamcara because the first time I smelled it, I really thought it was overwhelming. It was a lot. It's very bright and juicy florals with some tea aspects as well, but it just seemed so loud that it could potentially give me a headache. But it's stunning. There seems to be a little bit of Lily of the Valley in there. There's something candied, it's sweet. I think that just having the sample is going to be enough for me, but it's really beautiful. Anamcara. So she trained under, I want to say it was Chantal Rousse, but I could be wrong. But she trained under a Parisian perfumer, but she didn't formally go to perfume school. And so she kind of has her own style, which isn't your typical French perfumery. I really, really like this scent Montri, named after her dad, who was a poet and who inspires her fragrances. She had an oud before called Oud Infini. That's when I understood what oud really is, because that was stinky stuff. Montri's oud is tamer. This is honeyed, slightly bright, almost fresh, but quite inky. I really like Montri. I think that this evolution of oud in the collection should do really well. Very beautiful. I did receive Pelagos, which is her latest extrait de parfum, which is supposed to be kind of a marine fougere-like fragrance. And I have to say, this is a beautiful, handsome fragrance, but to me it feels rather ordinary compared to her usual work. If you told me that this was an Hermès fragrance or something from a traditional mainstream brand, I would believe you. So while it's a beautiful fragrance, it doesn't wow me. La Rhapsodie Noire, I actually already have a little one of. This is a fun one. This is a gourmand fougere. So you have kind of a barbershop aspect. Then you've got some gaillac wood, tobacco, caramel, creating a sticky, nutty, delicious, sweeter gourmand aspect. And it does feel like walking through Paris on a cool autumn evening. Somebody's preparing their pipe somewhere. You're having maybe a little chocolat chaud at a cafe, and you're going into the night. You never know what's going to occur. And then Rosarine, I think I smelled it at Aix-en-Provence in 2022, but I don't know. I don't know about this one. It doesn't, this is also another one that's a nice, pretty floral. And very honeyed as well. Also quite a little dark and woody, maybe oudi. I haven't looked up the notes. But these have their own special character and twist. Unless you've smelled a lot of fragrances, you might not understand what I mean, but all of these brands so far don't create perfumes. In fact, none of the brands I'm speaking to you about today create perfumes that feel perfumey. All of these just feel like little olfactive creations. And maybe Dusita is the closest thing to perfumey, but if you compare her to a traditional mainstream luxury brand, you can definitely tell the difference. And then penultimately, I want to talk about Noor Akoum, who does offer services as a perfumer, but I only know of one of her fragrances, and that is Grano by Jijide. This is good stuff. This is like raw dough, a little bit of earthiness, a little bit of greenness. This is a stunning, cozy, woody gourmand. I love this in the wintertime. I took this with me on my trip to Colorado. I think this is stunning. It's so special and different, but the way that it comes together creates a chic air that doesn't feel too challenging. I think that this is a little bready, doughy. Yeah. Noor Akoum, Lebanese perfumer, worked with Jijide on this dialogue collection, and I really, really appreciated this one. And so this is where we're now in the realm of indie perfumers that don't create for themselves but contract out to other brands. And then one brand that is the prime example of this, that I have many of in my collection, is Pernoire, and it's a Swiss brand. They're based in a town in the German part of Switzerland called Basel, and I have a few of their references, and I really appreciate their sense. The perfumer is Andreas Wilhelm, but the founders are not perfumers themselves, just perfume lovers who created a brand. Now, Pernoire, their marketing is that they're your personal alchemists, and I don't know if I need an alchemist in my life. I think that my life decisions and the way that my narrative and situation changes so dramatically throughout life is alchemy enough for me. But they do have some great stuff. They started in 2020, and in 2024 they have quite a few scents in their collection, and it's just been interesting to have a relationship throughout all of this time with them, to see how they grew. So one of their first fragrances was Mansa, which is this ambery, animalic, yuzu, ozonic fragrance. It's really sticky and rich and particular. Then they came out with Vitias, which is an oceanic, ambergris, pink pepper kind of fragrance. I do not like that one, but a lot of people do. It's like one of their best sellers. So clearly I'm not the target market or the proper reference for it. And then they came out with Tiara, which is underrated in my opinion. It's this gorgeous red berry rum oud. It's very sweet but also really cozy and somehow feels quite linear. But the ones that I have that I wanted to talk about are some of their newer scents. The first one being Naki, which I love to wear in the summertime. This is an peachy green nymph-like fragrance. It's very sweet, but it's quite unisex. I think it's muted properly, almost honeyed, I would say. Yeah, really lovely. It's great in the heat. It projects well. You can't help but smell it. One of my favorites is their more traditional rose oud kind of reference, and it's Mansa, inspired by Mansa Musa. So here I get quite a what I would say is a refreshing oud and a rose. It's very bright, clean. I would put this in the same realm as something like Perfect Oud by Maison Cyr. Alberto Morias. So to me, this is a clean, inky oud. It's not too skanky or animalic. I think it's even great in the heat, I would even say, if you wanted something with more depth. But this is a great, I would say, almost beginner-friendly rose oud. And the oud doesn't feel real. It feels more like an oud accord, but don't quote me on that. I don't know. So look into that. Then almost kind of a milestone in my creative process was the fact that I was on the scent board for their scent Amoral. And it was really interesting to see how the process works for them in trying to refine a new fragrance based on a certain mood. Now, Amoral is so special and different. And this is when I was like, yeah, this is perfume. This is like iris and tea and spices and oud. And but the way the oud comes together with, I think, some cypriol, you get almost a tar-like leather facet to it, which can be quite dark. And this way this perfume evolves is quite amorphous. So sometimes you get a soft aromatic tea iris, and then sometimes you get a bold leather with that iris hanging around somewhere. So I really, really appreciate this one, and I love wearing this in cooler months because it's quite potent. All of their perfumes are extrait de parfum. And then finally, one of my favorites was their new release, which was launched in March, which is Kama. And this is stunning. To me, this feels in the same realm as something like Aquila Absolute by Electimus. You have a leathery, kind of dark base, only slightly leathery, and then you have a cotton candy kind of vibe and berry vibe. It doesn't feel like juvenile at all. It feels like a grown-up version of a sweet fragrance. And in the way that it's darkened, it's very unisex. And it's fantastic. And I was so obsessed with this in March because I drained my sample immediately. And then they were like, here you go, girl. You keep your supply up. And then, of course, the hot weather came and I didn't reach for this as often. But I wore this the other night and wow, it's amazing. And I've really appreciated having a relationship with the brand because, first of all, they're so sweet and generous and kind, but also they do create unique fragrances and they seem to be just hardworking and have the right ethos. Which brings us to the last segment of this episode, which is in order to celebrate and thank you for tuning in. I am doing a giveaway for a bottle of Kama by Pernoire. You can look up the notes yourself, but this is a stunning fragrance which I think exemplifies part of my fragrance taste, which is why I wanted to share it with you. So if you are listening or watching this, you just need to comment a black heart and you get a bonus entry because the primary giveaway is going to be on Instagram, which you can follow at the Niche Sampler. All the details are always in the description. And so this competition will run for 2 weeks. We're announcing it on the 19th of August, and the competition will end on Sunday, the 1st of September, where I will be doing a draw and announcing the winner on Instagram. I will tag you in the post, or if the winner is on Spotify or on YouTube, I will comment on your post. I will not try and follow you or try and tell you to click links to stuff. I will contact you to get your shipping information that Pernoire can send the bottle to you. So that is it. Because you are the best loyal little community, I thought that I could give you an opportunity to have a better chance at winning, and just to thank you for always tuning in and being so kind and supportive and engaging and so interesting. Sometimes when I hear about what you guys are wearing or what you're smelling, I just feel like maybe maybe I need to step it up. Maybe my taste is a bit pedestrian these days. And that just keeps the passion alive and my explorations even more fun. And with that, I wish you a good week. Remember to sample before you buy. And as always, happy sniffing.